This week on SailAway. After the start of our 1,500-mile journey back to the Caribbean ends with a tow into Saint Augustine, we're left perplexed and happy to be here. We checked things over. It was completely dry of coolant. All right, we're a day late on our passage drink because we ended our passage being towed by someone. Here's to being at anchor again. Cheers. Passage drink. But 2 dead motors and a non-functioning generator won't stop us from enjoying one of our favorite cities.
We're going to the arcade!
Woo-hoo! But despite tons of great food, lots of fun, and some well-earned stress relief, the drama doesn't stop. Didn't drag, despite all the turning and pulling, but we did wind up pointed straight at this little 27-foot boat. So it's time to relocate and limp off to the relative security of a mooring ball, where we can really knuckle down and figure out our one working motor and our generator. After 2 weeks of head scratching and wrong turns, we have what we think might be the solutions. I don't know, I'm hopeful. Cautiously hopeful, I guess. Because if these fixes don't work, let's see what we got. Our future on this boat is very uncertain. All right, come on.
Ever wish you could escape normal life and experience more of the world?
So meet me on that island. Well, we did just that. We sold everything we owned on dry land and sailed away. Promise me that we'll sail away.
Now we are roaming the planet in search of new adventures and sharing it with you every week.
Just promise me that we'll sail away. So hit subscribe and escape normal with us. And I'll be yours forevermore. Come on, it's just that little button down there. That's it. We're getting off the boat.
How exciting and all.
I think it's exciting. Most people think it's exciting to get off the boat. We got some good news to report this morning. We got down in the engine and checked things over. It was completely dry of coolant. I know I checked it at one point while we were on the dock, and obviously we weren't running the motors. So I don't know. I don't know if that's just on me or if it lost coolant quickly. So we got to figure out why it lost the coolant. But the good news is it did fire up. It took some turning to get it going, but then it fired up and ran just fine. Oil pressure was up where it should be, and the temperature didn't go up. Checked the impeller again. The impeller's in good shape still, and it was shooting water out. Exhaust looked fine. The very good news is that the motor itself doesn't seem to be damaged in any way.
Well, sorry.
The bad news is we got to figure out where the coolant went and keep an eye on that. It was not obvious. I still think it was probably the best bet yesterday to get towed in. The motor was so hot and it was not cooling down that we wouldn't have been able to check the coolant anyway. By the time we did and figured out what was wrong and got it running again, it would have been dark, and we would have been coming in against current with one motor. So I think, considering all things, that was still the right thing to do. So that is good. We're back to having a functioning motor. We just got to figure out if we got a coolant leak. I mean, no matter what, it shouldn't have lost all of its coolant at any point, but that's something we'll have to figure out, and at the very least keep an eye on. So for now, we have a functioning motor. Turtle soccer.
Oh.
Shore leave.
Seems like I haven't done this in so long.
Despite how we arrived and all the problems that we're desperate to find solutions for, we were still really happy to be in Saint Augustine. It's been one of our favorite cities since we moved to the East Coast years ago, and a few pesky dead diesels weren't going to stop us from enjoying it. Let me take that bag from you? Or that thing. You're with me, bud. Okay, where are we headed?
Figure it out.
Narrate our entire journey.
Let's go. Let's go.
Just a stroll around this beautiful city and a couple of good lattes were enough to ease some of the stress in our shoulders and maybe get some of our hope back. All right, we're a day late on our passage drink because we ended our passage being towed by someone.
I like this. The podium. The podium.
The podium, you got second place.
I don't care.
He's taller than me. Look, this is so sweet.
Yeah, so we did not do a passage drink, not an official one. We drank plenty of drinks because we were towed in at the end of our passage, and I think we were not quite in the right mindset. Today, we have the working motor again. We just got to figure out why it drained all of its coolant. So today we're in a much better mood. We just went and explored Saint Augustine a little bit, got reacquainted. Here's to being at anchor again.
And friends.
Cheers and friends. Cheers.
Oh, all right.
That's a drink.
One more
Sorry.
time, we did it again.
I just kept talking.
Weird.
I hope you're okay being on YouTube.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you.
How's your wiener, dog?
It's almost done. He's really floppy.
Rivers will like him floppy.
Yeah.
Do you feel threatened?
It's a hot dog, dog. My ketchup is almost done. That's all.
That's what you're knitting now is ketchup?
Yeah, it's crochet.
Sorry. Crocheting ketchup.
I'm crocheting ketchup.
Maybe that should be the title of our next video.
Crocheting ketchup.
Well, aside from that, what is that racket you hear in the background? Well, I'll show you. Yeah, it's loud. But for a portable generator, it's not that loud. And that was $340, and I had a coupon or something on Amazon. We have continually had problems getting our main generator started. We don't think it's going to be anything too serious, but we just got to keep working through stuff to try to get fuel to it and get it started. Then hopefully it's generating power, etc., etc. In the meantime, for $320, we have a backup source to power our chargers. We sat here for, what was it, 5 days, I think? Just with solar and lithium alone, cycling through and charging. But not having a huge solar bank, we kind of lose ground every day. So we got to the point where the batteries were drained down pretty far. You know, this is not something that we want to be our permanent secondary charging source, but considering how much trouble we had with the generator on our last boat, and the fact that I'm certain this generator, while pretty new and I think fundamentally in good condition, doesn't look it, it's going to need a lot of external parts replaced, probably just one after the other. And I foresee other things going wrong even once we get it fixed, until we kind of catch up with all those corroded parts from the seawater hitting the generator. So it just seems for $320, it seemed like a no-brainer to have something that we know we can pull out, use to top our batteries nicely up, get a few days of charge out of them. We're going to be putting in a water maker here pretty soon. That generator will also run that water maker. That is the latest addition to all of our stuff on board, and it makes us feel a whole lot better. And the latest saga in the motors, after putting coolant in and running it several times, it's losing coolant pretty fast. However, we don't see much of it down below, so we're starting to wonder if maybe there's a bad seal in the heat exchanger, or the heat exchanger itself might have a hole somewhere that's allowing the fluid to get into the raw water that's just going out the exhaust. Could possibly be the whole gasket for the manifold has gone bad. We don't know. So it's a working motor, but it's limited right now. We got to figure out what's going on with that. That is your update. Otherwise, we're just kind of sitting here watching the tide turn. We had a kind of an exciting night last night.
It was the worst. It's not exciting. It was.
I don't know if was it the worst?
It was. at anchor where we didn't feel like we could actually do anything. There was no like options to change any circumstances. So
yeah, because of course,
pretty good.
during when things were happening, we went to fire up the starboard motor and we had no electric power to it. Timing like that seems to always happen. Yeah, we had strong wind here for the first time last night, and it was opposing the changing current. And so back here, especially in this corner of the anchorage, and with us having a bigger wind profile than the other boats near us, we were just spinning around in weird circles and doing all kinds of stuff. And there's a little boat parked very near us that we've gotten kind of close to before. If we had 2 good functioning motors, we probably would have re-anchored earlier than this. Now we're really dug in, which is good because dragging in this mud in these rivers is always kind of a concern. Didn't drag despite all the turning and pulling, but we did wind up somehow pointed straight at this little 27-foot boat, and just Lauren and Chris and I were all out on deck with fenders, Lauren on one corner, Chris on the other corner, and me trying to find a spot for a third one. Just our boat kind of pressed right up against the side of his. Didn't hurt anything. We didn't actually touch because we had fenders and hands, and it was slow. It just kind of, we looked at it like, what the heck is going on? Because it sure seemed like it should have stopped at the anchor chain and kind of swung sideways. It just kept going straight at him. He must have been floating toward us, and that was what, 2 or 3 in the morning, something like that. Once the current really filled in, we sort of found a spot and sat down. But it's that strong opposing wind that caused the problem. That's the only downside of anchoring someplace like this in these rivers. The current throws a whole nother crazy factor into everything, especially when wind comes up and it's opposing the current. Wind is coming that way. Current is coming from that way. Lauren's always the one barking orders when those times spring up.
I'm the only one that takes things seriously, and then all of a sudden things like...
That's not true.
I went, and I was the one that got up, because I felt the boat spinning,
Yeah.
and I looked out, and I opened the hatch too far so it banged. So by the time I got out, Dad was already out, because he was like, what was that noise? And so Dad and I were out there watching the boat just spin around, and then I came downstairs, and you're still asleep. I was like trying to tell you what was going on. And I was like, you can come up if you'd like to. And you were like, well, I'd like to keep sleeping. I was like, you're such a butthole.
Nice to have my own private anchor alarm.
No, this is not. You were supposed to be my anchor alarm. That was in our vows. You were my anchor, and I am your sail.
I'm your anchor recovery.
All right, with all this craziness, with almost hitting a boat, well, I mean, technically we did touch. We didn't really hit, we just kind of smooched. But anyway, so we're gonna kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We're gonna get on a mooring ball. This way we are also be able to dig into the motor and not have to worry about if something were to happen with our anchor while we were anchored out and not having a motor functional. Then that could be a really, really bad thing, you know, if we can't move to re-anchor, or, you know, if something happens. So we're gonna get on the mooring ball to alleviate that and have a really secure place to really dig into the motor for about a week. I hope it doesn't take more than that. But that's all that our reservation is for, so if it does, we'll have to figure something out.
Okay, the motor started? Check. Now, theoretically, we have about 30 minutes before it overheats. Add to that maneuvering with just one motor, and it meant deploying Chris in the dinghy just to help nudge us around if we needed it.
Got that mooring ball right? That's not...
This was only the second time I'd maneuvered the boat with only one motor, and definitely the first weaving in and out of other boats. I was happy to say it performed much better than I expected. hard to keep that thing on the ball with one motor. Luckily, Lauren hung on for dear life. The relative security of the mooring ball meant we could finally breathe easy after a few very sleepless nights. It also meant we felt secure enough to tear apart our one somewhat functioning motor. There is a lot going on right now. So currently we have starboard motor losing coolant, and we are this close to tracking down the mystery of how we're losing it. It's not going into the oil, and it is not evident anywhere outside the motor. We were messing with it, filling it up with coolant and running it, and for the first time we just left the radiator cap off with the thought of topping it up. Instantly exhaust billowed up out of the radiator. So we're like, okay, new factor to consider. And after talking to a couple people, mainly a friend of ours, Rob, who's one of our viewers from Michigan, he's a diesel mechanic. He's been emailing us ever since we were in Charleston, offering any help he might have. And he's been very knowledgeable. He surmised that it might possibly be the actual exhaust manifold, because supposedly these motors, the coolant flows through the manifold as well to cool it. So theoretically, if there's a crack in that tube or that channel, then not only would the coolant go straight out through the exhaust, but the exhaust fumes would come up through the radiator. And since we have two motors, one that we're not using, that means we have a known to be fully functional coolant system on this side that we can scavenge parts from to try. So today we are going to remove the manifold from the port side, swap them, and see what happens. So we're keeping our fingers crossed, because that would be a really not an easy fix. It's kind of a long operation to get it apart, but a lot better than having to do a head gasket. I don't know, I'm hopeful, cautiously hopeful, I guess. That's one.
Does it look bad?
I don't know.
Cool.
That was in one of our cylinders, man. I don't understand. One of the exhaust ports is just full of that. I mean, clearly that cylinder hasn't been firing for a while, and whatever that is, it's built up there. It's got to be.
Yeah.
It feels like a dead jellyfish.
Yeah, that's probably it's the one that we couldn't get the
Is it?
injector out of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, that's it.
Second one. Back.
Good Lord. None of them look good. Alright, well, try to clean this thing up, I guess. That's the sound of the motor running again. We got the one assembly from the port side. We cleaned it up, put it down there on the starboard side, got everything clamped up, screwed down, torque wrenched properly, and we just fired it up. It's not blowing exhaust out of the radiator cap, which is a very good sign, because it did that right away last time. So now we're just running it, see what happens. We'll run it for like a half hour and turn it off, see what we've got in the radiator. Temperature's just coming up a little bit, so nothing crazy there. I don't know. We'll wait and see. I'll let you know. It's time for the moment of truth. We ran it for about 30 minutes, and then we let it sit for about 30 minutes. Maybe not even that, because I am too impatient and I really want to know. Let's see what we got. Alright, come on. Look at that water. Holy shit, I can't believe it. That thing drained the entire tank in a half hour last time we ran it. Okay, I think seems like this worked. It's time for a beer, and then we gotta figure out what our next steps are. Treat this motor to a freaking spa day. That's what the next steps are, because this is our motor for the foreseeable future. Cheers! After all our other issues, when that starboard motor went down, a lot of despair really creeped in. We truly didn't know what we would do. We wanted to get back to our lives in the Caribbean and away from the East Coast for hurricane season. And East Coast marina or yard fees were not in our budget. Suddenly, our planned journey home had new hope.
We're going to the arcade! Woohoo! Because things are really walkable in Saint Augustine and it's really fun. We got off the boat. We're walking. It's my narration for today.
Hi, Ophelia. We were headed to Sarbez, which in addition to being an arcade is a gourmet grilled cheese shop. Sure.
What kind did you get?
Wakey bakey.
Wakey bakey. What's on yours?
2 eggs, bacon, and cheddar. 2 veggies, breakfast sandwich.
Is it delicious? You didn't get eggs on yours. Mine has caramel and apples and bacon.
Can I have some of the bacon?
Yeah,
Can I have some of the bacon?
maybe. Bacon. Okay, ready? You're gonna get your picture taken. It's not Grandpa. There you go. Careful. Nice job.
It's the only way.
There it was. You did good.
Not only is there beer, awesome grilled cheese, and fun arcade games for the whole family, but your 7-year-old can also learn some valuable college skills. Can you play chord? He's a natural, folks. Got a beautiful morning here in Saint Augustine. We are at it again with yet another experiment for the affordability of boating. We have been working on the generator, trying to figure out what our issue is. We've been able to get it running, and it runs very, very well. He got it to the point where there's no longer any fuel leak issues. Everything's firing nicely. The shut-off solenoid that turns the injector pump on and off has a loose connection that we're going to repair today. But every time we've done it, we're still not getting any power out of it, any generator. We're getting like 8 volts. So something's happening, it's just not converting it into full power. So Chris replaced the brushes on the motor, cleaned a bunch of contacts. Everything is looking pretty good, and we're kind of down to it being probably the voltage regulator. They call it the AVR, automatic voltage regulator, and it's basically just a circuit board that controls the voltage. Those, brand new, somewhere in the $750 range. Absolutely insane. So I did a little bit of research online and through a trawler forum where a guy was having an issue with his M673, which is what we have, and he came up with this solution. This is an AVR from Generator Parts on Amazon. Price tag $25. You heard that right, folks. $25. You have to buy a couple little tiny extras. You need an LED light and a fuse, and that's it. Otherwise, it's all just normal connections. A couple other guys on that same thread were following in his tracks, and for $25, I can't see why we wouldn't try it also. So once again, with an eye on trying to keep things affordable, which we sure need, we're going to experiment with this little puppy and see what happens. And then the other thing that's happening this week, it might begin today, all this stuff. We're going to start working on the water maker. So yeah, a lot of stuff happening this week. We've got a week and 2 days left on this mooring ball, and then we're out of here, if not a little bit sooner, depending on the weather windows. So, it'll be a busy week. We may have trouble. Yep, I knew it.
Somebody had to pull a gun.
Yeah, it's Florida. Always turn around for more. Come along for a broadside. There it is. Drifted away on an ocean. It's a pirate ship fight out here, Rivers. They're shooting cannons at each other.
Oh, that was fast.